Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing. And so this is the information session for the 9 total affordable rental housing units at the Pastures at Dover in Dover, Massachusetts. So the application for this lottery has already closed. So the purpose of this information session is to give a little bit of background information on the available apartments, the lottery process, what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during the session, you're encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat that you have there, or I'll be stopping throughout the presentation just to ask if anyone has any questions. So this is a live session. It'll be recorded and posted to our website in case anyone wasn't able to join that wants to view it. And so just for some background information on who we are, so SEB Housing, we're not the on-site management team for this property. We're an off-site affordable housing consulting group that has been hired to market the affordable units, conduct the information session, collect and review the applications of the lottery applicants, and then eventually run the lottery. So in the initial phases, we're going to be your main point of contact rather than the management office, but then further along in the process, you'll be in touch with the on-site management team at the Pastures. So the first step in the process you've already done. So you've applied for the lottery, you've been found eligible, and you qualify for the affordable housing program based on the information that you self-reported on your application. Later on in the process, if you're one of the top applicants on one of the waiting lists, you'll need to provide supporting verifications, meaning pay stubs, things like that, to confirm your income. But for right now, you submitted that lottery application, and what you self-reported shows that you would be under the income limit. The second step in the process is after the lottery. If you're one of the top households on one of the waiting lists, you'll be in touch with the leasing office to do your lease eligibility screening. And if you've already rented somewhere before, you might be familiar with what that might entail. So credit check, rental history check, that sort of thing is what you can expect from a lease screening. And then the third and final step in the process is once you've been approved by the leasing office over at the Pastures at Dover, and they've confirmed that you're lease eligible, you're going to be then directed back to SEB Housing, and that's when you're going to have to provide the verifications of your income and other information that was listed on your lottery application. So at that point, you'll have about 10 days to get that information into us. We'll work with you to confirm that that we have everything. So if you don't submit everything on the first go around, that's perfectly fine. All right, so if you haven't already, there was a posting. There is a posting on our website that has the link or has a PDF of the information packet for this property. And that marketing material contains most of the information that I'm going to be going over tonight. So take a look at that if you're interested in this opportunity, which you are because you've already applied. They also have a website that I'm going to try to, I didn't put it here in my notes, but the website itself for the property is live. And it is, it's just pasturesatdover.com. So if you go on their website, on the website for the property, they have more information on floor plans. They have a more comprehensive list of amenities, some different photos, so you can take a look there as well. Most of you applied for this lottery using the online application. So the lottery itself is going to be held on Monday, the 6th, and it's going to be in the same format as this in terms of a Zoom session. I'll be sharing my screen so you can see the drawing take place. You don't need to be a resident of Dover to apply for these apartments. There is going to be local preference for some of the units. And what that means is basically on some of the waiting lists, if you are a Dover resident or if you work full-time within the town, you're going to have a more favorable placement on that waiting list than you would if you didn't live in Dover. Okay, so the units themselves, there's some more information on your screen right now. So there are 3 one-bedroom apartments. Those have 1 bathroom, and they're between 880 square feet to around 1,066 square feet. The rent is set at $2,093. Then there's 4 two-bedroom apartments that have 2 bathrooms, and the square footage is between about 1,105 to 1,140 square feet. And the rent for those 2 bedrooms is $2,485. And then there are also 2 3-bedroom affordable apartments. Those also have 2 bathrooms, and there's 1,245 square feet, and the rent is $2,858. So those rents are set based on a formula from HUD's, which is Housing and Urban Development's area median income for the Boston-Dover area. It's not, the rents aren't going to change based on your income if your income goes up or down. It's not similar to a subsidy in that way. These are the rents, and they will stay the rents, other than once per year they might change or increase when HUD revises their area median incomes. But if you were to lease one of these apartments, within the next few months or anytime this year, your lease is not going to, your rent is not going to change until at least 1 year from when you sign your first lease. So the apartments have in-unit laundry. The community itself has a common meeting room, access to basement storage facilities, an outdoor dog park, cooking and seating area, playground. They call it a tot lot. I'm assuming it's a playground. There's a free parking space included for every resident as well, so you have access to that. Tenants are responsible for paying the cost of gas, which includes heat, cooking, hot water. Tenants are also responsible for electricity and water charges. Sewer charges are included in the rent, so the property owner will pay those. Pets are permitted, subject to restrictions, which the leasing office will have a lot more information for you on that if you need it. The pet fees are $100 a month for a dog, $75 for a cat. Usually these properties have, breed restrictions, certain breeds of dogs that are not allowable. So since we know already that there are more interested and eligible applicants for this lottery than there are available units, that's why the lottery is going to take place. And the lottery is restricted to households whose annual incomes are up to 80% of the area median income for Dover. That means that if anyone who is over income for this lottery has not been given a lottery application number, which all of you have. So the eligibility criteria, you've already been screened for this, but you've been found to be within the income and asset parameters that were that this affordable housing program says you need to be within. We screened you for that when we looked at your self-reported income in your application. And then you also need to keep in mind that household priority is going to be given on these waiting lists based on your household composition. So what generally that means is larger households are going to have priority for larger units over smaller households. And specifically for this lottery, you want to keep in mind that a 1-person household can't live in a 2-bedroom unit. A 2-person household can't live in a 3-bedroom unit unless a household member has a disability, which requires a reasonable accommodation for an extra bedroom. And there's more information in the information packet about household types, but we've already screened your household for which type you'd belong to, and you also received the application number via email, and that email also has confirmation of what waiting lists you can expect to be added to. So just to circle back on the first eligibility criteria to explain more about how we calculate income. Again, you haven't submitted any income verifications to us, but to give you a sense of how we are going to look at your income and sort of what we're going to need to gather, you should take a look at that documentation requirements guide that was emailed to you with your lottery application number. So that guide basically details what types of documentation we're going to need from you depending on your income and assets. So the number of pay stubs you're going to need to submit, the bank statements that you might need to submit. All households are required to submit a copy of your most recent federal tax return. So income for the program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months. So any income that's coming into the household for anyone over the age of 18 would need to be counted. Wage income for a minor, so someone under 18, we wouldn't count. And if you have a full-time student who is a dependent of yours, we would only count the first $480 of their wages. We are required by the program to count gross income, so the amount that you make before taxes, even though, none of us take home our full salary because there's Social Security that's taken out and Medicaid and Medicare and all of that, but we do need to count when we are reviewing your income. We have to count the gross income. So in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to need to assume that you're going to continue to make it in the future, unless we have definitive documentation stating that you're not going to be making it in the future. So for example, if you know that you're not going to be eligible for overtime in the coming year, if your employer is able to, write a letter to that effect, we'll be able to take that into consideration when we are reviewing your information. So there's no asset limit for the affordable rental opportunity. So you might be retired, you might have a significant amount of assets in a bank account, for example, that's fine. Although there is no asset limit, we are still going to need to verify your assets because some assets can earn interest, which could mean that we need to consider that towards your total household income. So when you're thinking about your assets, it's not just checking and savings accounts, but if you have retirement accounts, Venmo, PayPal accounts, that sort of thing, that will be, those will be items that we're asking for when we are looking into your certification application, which will come after your lease screening. Yep, so the question here was, is there any one bedrooms available? Yes, there's 3 one-bedroom units, 3 one-bedroom affordable units. All right, so you've been found eligible for the lottery. Like I said, you were emailed a lottery application number. That was the number that was in the form of a series of numbers. So if you were the first person to apply and be eligible for the lottery, your number is A.001. It's not a ranking of any sort at this point. Like I said, it just means that you were the first application to be approved for the lottery. And it is the number that is going to be drawn in the lottery on Monday. So your name, your first and last name are not going to be called or anything like that. So you're going to want to keep that number handy when you are looking at the waiting list after the lottery. The email that you received also confirmed whether or not you reported that you qualify for local preference. It confirmed whether or not you had listed yourself as someone who needed a disabled accessible unit, and all of that. So make sure, if you haven't already, take a good look at that email. Make sure that all the information in there is accurate. It also has your household size and that sort of thing. So like I said, the lottery is going to be happening on Monday. That again is just another step in the process. You're not going to know where you fall on the waiting list during that session on Monday. And that's because I still need to sort the results of the lottery. So we do the drawing, but then not everyone has applied for every unit size. Some people have local preference or priority. And so once we sort the results of the waiting list, our goal is to always get those, the sorted waiting lists out to you either that night or in this case, no later than Tuesday morning. So you can take a look, you can be expecting an email from us very soon after the lottery. And, generally it's better to be called earlier in the lottery. But like I said, it's not the deciding factor as to where you're going to fall on the waiting list or if you're going to have a better chance than some other applicants at renting one of these units. When we do the lottery, it's going to be screen sharing it. So I'm going to put the numbers, the lottery application numbers, they're going to be digitally randomized on the screen using a website called random.org. Basically, it's going to just generate a random order instead of pulling application numbers from a box. Every lottery number is going to be included in the lottery. So sometimes when people think of lotteries, you think of, if there's 9 units, there's going to be 9 winners. So there's going to be 9 numbers drawn, but that's not how these lotteries work. We pull every number in order to, or sort every number in this case, to be able to establish an order of priority on the waiting list. So like I said, in general, it's better to be called earlier, to have your number drawn earlier, but there are still other factors that come into play because we have to sort the results onto waiting lists. So for example, if you're a type 1 household and you're drawn first in the lottery, but you've only applied for a 2-bedroom unit, you're still going to be behind all of the type 2 households on that 2-bedroom waiting list. That's not going to apply to most people here because most type 1 households are not eligible for 2-bedroom units, but you can kind of hopefully see what I mean there. So I'll populate the waiting lists, get them out to you no later than Tuesday morning. When you're reviewing the email from us on Tuesday morning, which will come from info@sdbhousing.com, when you see that email, there's going to be some attachments to it. One of them is going to be just kind of a roundup of the applications that we received for each waiting list, how many people had local preference, that sort of thing. But then the waiting lists themselves are also going to be attached. And when you find your number, your lottery application number on those waiting lists, you're going to have a better idea of whether or not you're going to be invited forward right away to the next step in the process, which is to apply for a lease. So we'll be connecting the top households on each waiting list with the management team. Your contact information will also be sent to them so that you're able to connect and apply for their lease screening. You'll have about 10 days to do that. And then once you are approved by the leasing office, like I said, you'll come back to SDB Housing so we can do your program eligibility screening, which involves submitting your pay stubs and that sort of thing. When you're doing your lease screening with the leasing office, just keep in mind that it's very common for leasing offices to invite more households to complete their lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at the Pastures at Dover, there's 2 affordable 3-bedroom units, but they will likely be screening 4 or more households because inviting from the waiting list, inevitably there's going to be some people who either aren't interested at that point or aren't eligible, and they want to keep the process moving along. So for that reason, if you see that you're number 1 on the waiting list, don't give notice to your current landlord if you have one right away, because there are still some steps in the process, including that lease screening and the final screening with SDB Housing. So if you are screened, you're the first person on one of those waiting lists, you are found eligible by both the leasing office and SDB Housing, you're going to have your first choice at the affordable unit. So say you were first on the 2-bedroom waiting list, you're going to have first choice at the 2-bedroom units, regardless of whether or not the second person on the waiting list completed the process before you. The order of the waiting list needs to be honored. So you can decide what is important to you. Maybe the lease date for one unit works better for you. Maybe you want to live in a certain part of the building, and one of these units is in an area that you prefer. Once you've reserved an affordable apartment, the leasing office is going to notify us at SDB Housing so we can coordinate that final step, which is the submission of all of your income, asset, tax documentation that we'll need in order to complete your final program eligibility review. So hopefully at that point, you've been able to look through some of the documentation requirements guide and gather some of the information that you'll be submitting to us. Like I said, this is a lot of information that you need to submit. So there are no worries if you are not able to get everything into us on your first attempt to do so. Sometimes you think you have everything, you submit it to us, but we still need, some more bank statements or clarification on something that we saw. So once leased, you're finished with screenings until your lease renewal date. So if you're living in an affordable apartment, you're always going to have a recertification, is what it's normally called, every year. So if you sign a lease for June 1st of this year, July 1st of this year, next year around this time, maybe a little bit earlier, your leasing office will be asking for your renewal application. And so in order to qualify for these apartments, your income, total household income was at or below 80% of the area median income. At your lease renewal, it doesn't need to stay the same. Your income could have increased fairly significantly. So as long as you are under 140% of the area median income next year, you would still qualify for your affordable apartment. So to give you an example of what that might mean, so a household of two would have qualified for this lottery with a total household income of $91,200. And then at lease renewal, that same family can make up to about $127,680. So a little bit of wiggle room there for anyone who may be planning to have a new job or anything like that would involve a raise increase. So question here, if you're out of state, is there flexibility with doing lease signings virtually? So that would be up to the leasing office. I assume so, but I don't know for sure. That would be something that you would check with them on, or maybe they'd just wait, they'd have you reserve the unit and they'd have you wait until you actually are closer to sign the lease. But again, that'll be up to them. That'll be something that you'll ask when the time comes. And so that, I think I have one more message here. That really covers the steps that are next in the process. And a lot of the information that sometimes I'm sharing during these meetings is about how to apply, what to list on your application, but you guys have already made it through that process. So you're all found eligible for the lottery that's Monday. Does anyone have any questions about the next steps in the process or anything else? And again, the lottery itself on Monday is just another step. You still are going to have the lease screening and the final program eligibility screening with SEB Housing. And but we like to make sure that we get those sorted waiting lists out to everyone as soon as possible. So hopefully you will have that as soon as possible. How many applicants were there? So this is stuff that I'll have on Monday. I know that there was over 100 applicants, but again, that doesn't mean that there's no waiting list is going to be 100 people long, because there are different unit types. Well, it could be 100 people long because it may be over 100 now. Is there a minimum income standard? So there was when you were applying for the lottery, but all of you have already received your lottery application numbers. And the reason I'm saying that is because I emailed everyone who had already been eligible or found eligible for the lottery. So unless you've invited someone else, all of you that are on this call or that were aware of the call have been screened and found eligible. So the minimum income limits are actually not set by the program, the affordable housing program. They are set by the leasing office, and usually every leasing office wants to confirm that households are eligible to or able to pay the rent. And do we work with Section 8 applicants? Yep, Section 8 applicants, anyone who has a mobile housing voucher is always welcome to apply. And the minimum income amount is not applicable to anyone with a mobile voucher that they will be using at the property, because your voucher agency is going to be picking up part of your rent. So you don't need to make a certain amount to be able to qualify. Are we able to do an apartment tour before signing a lease? Yep, of course. So these units, my understanding is they're either ready now or they're going to be ready very soon. So yep, you'd be able to, when you're doing maybe your lease screening, for example, if you haven't seen the property already, you'll be able to do that then, which is the next step in the process if you're one of the top households on any of these waiting lists. Are there any security deposits required? So let me see if I have that information from the property. I'm thinking I might not, but normally what is taken is full month's rent, but sometimes, yeah, I don't have that information, but sometimes we, suggest that you ask the property if you don't have that amount up front. Sometimes they'll do a payment plan, or they'll just do a reduced amount for applicants that are coming in through an affordable program. But normally it's security. You're going to pay your first month's rent regardless, and then last month's rent, unless you're a voucher holder, in which case that doesn't really make any sense to take last month's rent because your rent could fluctuate. Who do I call to set up a tour? Sure. So the leasing office's contact information will be shared with everybody that was lottery eligible immediately following the lottery. So that's one of the pieces of information that will be sent to you when I send the waiting lists out, either on Monday night or Tuesday morning. So you'll have that as of next week. Anything else? All right, I appreciate you all joining me tonight. And the lottery, like I said, is Monday, and that's the next step in the process. So you'll be hearing from us, even if you don't attend the lottery on Monday, you'll be hearing from us Monday evening. Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone.